Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of basically my fantasy football start, sit, and touchdown prediction. This episode, I break them out by position. This episode is about the quarterbacks. Just a reminder for everybody before we get rolling here, if you could give me 2 seconds for 2 clicks, a like and a subscribe, it helps us grow, it unlocks features. The more subscribers we get, and if we become a YouTube partner, the better these videos will get. Let's just jump in. I apologize to everybody. I had a lot of internet issues and Halloween and all that stuff, so I missed the San Francisco-Arizona game, so we're just talking about the weekend. We'll start with Houston versus Jacksonville. I think both of these quarterbacks are a start. These London games are always a little goofy from my point of view. Sometimes teams just don't get off the plane in that long trip. But Jacksonville's used to it. I like what Gardner Minshew did last week. He kind of took another step forward. I wouldn't say a step forward, but I think he had a really nice game last week after a couple of maybe games where he didn't play as well. But that's just, he's going to be a little bit up and down. And of course, defensive matchups will play some things into that. Now, Houston, I think Deshaun Watson is a start. I remember the last time these two teams played in Houston, I believe it was a 13-12 defensive lockup game. I do think there is going to be more scoring. So again, I think both of these quarterbacks are starts. Chicago versus Philadelphia. Mitch Trubisky at this point, let's just be honest. I'm sorry, Chicago fans, but he's not a fantasy football start. I don't even know if he's an NFL start at this point. Depending on your opinion, if you're a Chicago fan, on what the cause is behind it, the fact is Trubisky's just not putting up a lot of stats. He's regressed, at least in terms of statistical performance from last year. I have Trubisky as a sit. He's projected at a 15. That's maybe 1 touchdown. By the way, Houston and Jacksonville, I didn't predict the touchdowns. Houston, I expect Deshaun Watson to have at least 2 touchdowns, and Gardner Minshew, again, I think he's going to have at least 2 touchdowns. Again, higher scoring game. Deshaun Watson, it's kind of actually a lower projection. I've been having him at 3 or 4 touchdowns. I think that Jacksonville will do a decent job, but I don't really think you can contain Deshaun Watson at this point. He's too good. Back to Chicago, Philadelphia. So Trubisky, I think he's 1 touchdown. Philadelphia, Carson Wentz, I think he's 1 touchdown. This is going to be a defensive game from my point of view. Philadelphia's big liability in the defensive game is, the deep pass. I don't know that Trubisky's going to be able to get it there. If you're kind of a risk taker, look for the receivers, but check back in that video when we do the receivers. Next game, we have Indianapolis versus Pittsburgh. I have Jacoby Brissett as a fringe start, projected at around a 19. That's probably 1 3/4 touchdown, 1.75 touchdowns. So more likely 2 touchdowns than 1. Pittsburgh, Mason Rudolph, I don't like the matchup for him. I think he's 1 touchdown throw. Although this James Conner injury, if he's out, they are going to have to throw a little bit more. And I like what Deontay Johnson's doing there. And James Washington with Deontay Johnson and, of course, Juju Smith-Schuster. Those are some nice weapons to throw to. Pittsburgh's kind of on a little bit of a roll here. People are kind of sleeping on them based on how they started the season. But suddenly they're 3-4. They're kind of back in the thick of things. So keep an eye out there. Minnesota versus Kansas City. I like this matchup really for both teams. I think Kirk Cousins is what I would call a fringe start. Maybe, he's probably like in that 10 area, number 10 overall in the league this week. I think he throws for 2 touchdowns against this Kansas City defense. Kansas City, meanwhile, I know it's going to be, well, I guess I'm not sure if we've officially heard yet, but it's going to be Matt Moore this week. And I think Matt Moore will throw for 2 touchdowns as well. This Minnesota defense is awesome, but remember, even with Matt Moore, you got Andy Reid game planning, and there's a lot of talent on Kansas City. So I said he was a daily fantasy start last week. I think he performed pretty well for anybody who did buy him in daily fantasy. But, this week I think he's another start. They're just too talented of an offensive team to not start the quarterback there, and Moore showed that he can be serviceable as a backup to Mahomes. Nobody is Patrick Mahomes, but he can fill in there. The Jets versus the Dolphins. I don't have either quarterback as a start. I think Darnold throws for about 1.25 touchdowns. That's what he's projected at. So more likely 1 than 2. And then Miami, Fitzpatrick. I don't like it at all. I have him at 1 touchdown, if that. Tennessee versus Carolina. Now here's an interesting thing. I have Tannehill as kind of as a non-start. I have him as a sit, but I just think that he's going to outperform this. This is my gut. Usually I use analytics here, but Tennessee, it's been working off a lot of Mariota data. It's been working off a lot of things from earlier in the season. I think Tannehill's a different kind of quarterback. I think that he makes these receivers better. I think he makes Derrick Henry better. I think the whole team is better with Tannehill playing. I like him. I like what he can do. I think he's going to throw for 2 touchdowns again this week. Now for Carolina, I don't have Kyle Allen as a start. I think this Tennessee defense is going to give Carolina problems this week, at least in the passing game. Christian McCaffrey, you start every week, but this is a quarterback segment. not a running back segment. Moving on, we have Washington versus Buffalo. Don't start Washington in their passing game at all. But Josh Allen, I like him. I think he'll be able to run for some yardage, and I think he's going to throw for 2 touchdowns against this Redskins team. And again, I think it's throwing for 2, running for 0, but it's Josh Allen. You could always get that rushing touchdown too. That's one of the beauties of having Josh Allen is, if you play in a league that gives you more points for rushing touchdowns than passing touchdowns, Josh Allen can get you there. Next game we have Detroit versus Oakland. I like Matt Stafford. I like Derek Carr. Stafford is actually one of my favorite quarterbacks of the week this week. So, he's still available on a lot of waivers out there. If you're looking for a plug and play, if you are looking for, somebody to fill in for you in daily fantasy, I think Stafford is a nice buy there. Derek Carr, I think that Oakland's going to find some things in the passing game against this Detroit defense. So, I like both of these quarterbacks. Stafford, I think, throws for 3 touchdowns, and I think Carr throws for 2. Let's see, Tampa Bay versus Seattle. Jameis Winston, he's too volatile for me personally. My analytics say that he's going to throw for about 2.5 touchdowns. So that's a nice projection and a start, but he's just too volatile for me personally. I just generally stay away from him. For Russell Wilson, I think he throws for 3. He's definitely a start. One of my favorite quarterbacks. I think he's actually my second overall quarterback this week in terms of analytic projection behind Matt Stafford. Cleveland versus Denver. I have Baker Mayfield as a no start. But like Tennessee, I think Cleveland's going to start to go on a run here. I wouldn't say I've been critical. I think I've been fair. So if you're a Cleveland fan, you probably haven't been very fond of what I've been saying lately. But I do think Cleveland's going to go on a run. I think Baker Mayfield will look more like the Baker Mayfield of the back half of 2018, starting basically maybe not this game because the Denver matchup is tough. But I do think Cleveland goes on a run. I would start to invest in these players. Baker Mayfield, I don't think you need to pick him up off of waivers this week and play him, and he is available in most leagues, I think. But pay attention to him going forward. I think Baker Mayfield is one of my favorite players to pick up in the future. Now Denver, Joe Flacco's not starting. Don't start Denver in the passing game this week. I think it's going to be rough sledding for them. Green Bay versus the Chargers. I have Aaron Rodgers as a start, but only throwing for about 2 touchdowns. Phillip Rivers is about 1.5 to 2. I don't have him as a start. I think you can find better. Certainly with Stafford available on most leagues waiver wire, I would pick him up and start him over Rivers this week. Green Bay's defense is tough. The Chargers, I don't know if they're going to be able to get anything going. New England versus Baltimore. Now, interestingly enough, I have neither quarterback as a start, but this is an interesting one. New England's defense has been so dominant that it's basically kind of wiping out how good this Baltimore Ravens offense is. I have Lamar Jackson projected at a 12, which is ridiculous. I think he's going to outperform that. But, New England's going to do what they do. They're going to try to take away what Baltimore wants to do, and that would include the running game, and they're going to try to contain Lamar Jackson in the pocket. I do think he is a risk of a start. Certainly in daily fantasy, I think he's going to be more expensive than he's worth this week. Tom Brady at a 16. I'm intrigued at how low that number is, but I do think he still throws for 2 touchdowns this week. So if you have him and he's your regular starter, I don't have any issues there. The projection's not great, but I really think both of these quarterbacks are going to outplay these projections. Again, that's just my gut feeling based on how I think this game will go. Lastly, we have Dallas versus the Giants. I have Dak Prescott coming off a bye week as a definite start. I think he throws for probably 3 touchdown passes against the Giants defense. Daniel Jones, I don't have as a start. I think Dallas's defense is really going to tighten up starting this week, especially in the passing game. Now, Saquon Barkley in the running game, yeah, he's a start. But again, passing-wise, I don't have Daniel Jones as a start. I think he throws for 1, possibly 2, but more likely 1 touchdown pass. So there you go. That takes me through the quarterbacks. Hope you enjoyed it. Now, keep in mind, I'm going to be doing all position groupings. So if you're looking for running back, wide receiver, tight end, I'll be doing those as well. So check for the videos. Look for our Week 9 playlist. We have the game previews, the deep dives, all that stuff, priming you for Week 9. Once again, like and subscribe and comment. I'll be interactive with you, and we'll catch you on another episode. Thanks, everyone.